Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Great to have you with us for episode 17.
Yeah, hello everyone.
Today we're really getting into someone who's just impossible to ignore. Probably one of the most talked about figures of our time, Elon Musk.
Absolutely. Defining, polarizing, definitely someone who sparks debate.
Exactly. And we're aiming to go a bit beyond the usual headlines, you know. We want to take a really close look at his life, his pretty radical way of doing business.
And also the ripple effects, right? The ethical questions that come up with huge ventures like SpaceX, Tesla, and maybe especially Neuralink.
Right. We've gathered quite a bit of material for you today.
We've looked at sources covering, well, everything from his upbringing in South Africa, the specific context there, right through to the nitty-gritty of his business strategies.
And we'll be contrasting some things too, like the sheer ambition of aiming for Mars versus some maybe surprising internal challenges back at PayPal, his earlier company.
It's a fascinating mix.
It really is. Now, for you listening, especially if you're using the deep dive to really push your English skills, your comprehension at that intermediate or advanced level, well, this story is packed with useful stuff.
Yeah, it's full of modern business language, complex ideas, and let's be honest, some pretty high-stakes drama.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So treat this as like an active learning session. Don't forget, you're in control here. You can slow down the audio if we're going too fast. Pause it whenever you need to maybe look up a word or just think something through.
And take notes. That always helps.
Absolutely. So let's dive in. What makes Musk's story so essential, do you think, beyond just the headlines?
Well, I think it's more than just a biography, isn't it? It's really a study in how someone takes this incredibly bold vision, turns it into actual businesses, and, what compromises or trade-offs are involved when you're aiming for these massive, almost species-level goals.
Okay, let's unpack that a bit. There are plenty of ambitious tech founders out there, right? Silicon Valley is full of them. So why does Musk's story seem to hit differently? Why does it resonate so much?
I think, honestly, it's the sheer scale. The vertical leap, you could call it.
Vertical leap,
Meaning most leaders aim for, making things a bit better, incremental improvements. He seems to be constantly aiming for complete shifts, paradigm shifts.
Okay.
When you look at the sources, the goal isn't just, say, a faster car or a slightly cheaper rocket launch. It's framed as being about the long-term survival of humanity.
Right. Sustainable energy on Earth with Tesla.
Yeah.
Or becoming multiplanetary with SpaceX and Mars.
Exactly. And when you frame the stakes that high, people pay attention. It forces you to.
Yeah, that makes sense. And looking through the materials, I kept seeing a few core traits pop up again and again. There's obviously this intense curiosity almost, obsessive focus.
Pathological, some might say, yeah.
Yeah, but also critically, this willingness to take enormous risks, like truly massive risks, sometimes risking everything personally.
Right, pushing right to the edge of financial ruin, especially in the early days of SpaceX and Tesla.
And then there's this method, this way of innovating that seems to just deliberately ignore how things are normally done in an industry.
That's absolutely key, that defiance of norms. He doesn't seem to have much respect for legacy systems or the way things have always been done.
Like reusable rockets or selling cars directly without dealers.
Exactly. Things that seasoned industry people basically said were impossible or, commercial suicide. He just seemed to ignore that.
So, okay, our mission today for you listening is to try and give you a structured way to understand how this mindset came about.
And along the way, you'll pick up some really practical English tools. We're talking advanced vocabulary, some of those more nuanced idioms.
Cultural insights, too, like that whole Silicon Valley move fast and break things idea, but maybe on a grander scale.
And we'll connect it back to persistence, right? The kind you need for any big challenge, like, say, really mastering English. And we'll also get into that duality you mentioned earlier, the incredible tech achievements versus the sometimes significant ethical questions and human costs. We'll look at how much he really has risk.
Which brings up a good question for you to think about as we go through this. If you are facing a huge challenge, maybe in your learning, maybe in life, what rule or boundary would you be willing to risk breaking to achieve your goal?
Something to ponder.
Okay, let's start at the beginning then. To really get a handle on where this appetite for risk comes from, we need to understand his early life in South Africa, specifically during the really turbulent final years of apartheid.
Yeah, that context is just crucial. You can't separate the person from that environment. He grew up when things were incredibly unstable nationally. You had the major uprisings, especially around 84 to 86.
Right, leading to the government declaring a state of emergency.
Exactly, but And this is a really important distinction the sources make, despite all that national chaos. For his family, life in their specific area, these affluent, very segregated white suburbs like Waterkloof and Pretoria, it apparently remained quite insulated, peaceful even.
That sounds like real cognitive dissonance, doesn't it? The whole country is in upheaval, but inside this bubble, this enclave, life just carries on.
Precisely. And that word you used, enclave, that's a great vocabulary point for you listening. An enclave is like a small, distinct area or community that's surrounded by a larger, often very different or even hostile environment.
So it's not just geography, it's psychological too.
Totally. It implies a kind of insulation, maybe even a willful ignorance. One source quoted a peer saying they were just going about our very normal life while massive social change was happening right outside. It speaks to that idea of like selective reality or insularity. Really useful concepts in English.
Now, let's talk about his school years, because the sources document some pretty severe experiences there.
Mhm.
He started at Bryanston High.
He did for the first couple of years, and the reports are quite stark. He was, the sources say, viciously bullied.
Viciously. That adverb really hits hard.
It does. It emphasizes the cruelty, the intensity of it. And it apparently culminated in this horrific incident where he was actually thrown down some stairs, badly enough to need hospitalization.
Yeah.
And you can imagine that that level of trauma, physical and emotional, it often leads to a kind of psychological retreat, right? The sources mention him diving deep into books, into computers, basically finding a safer world he could control.
So that experience of intense bullying, that trauma, could be seen as a driver for wanting to create his own highly controlled environments later on.
It's certainly a plausible interpretation, yeah. A way to escape chaos and powerlessness.
He then finished his schooling at Pretoria Boys High. And the description there is a bit different. Peers calling him more of an average personality. But the school itself seems interesting.
Yeah, that's another important piece of the context. Pretoria Boys High, for its time and place, was apparently quite progressive.
How so?
Well, it had actually defied the government back in 1981, using some kind of loophole involving a diplomat to admit a black student, which was a big deal then. And the head teacher was known for promoting ideas like democracy and human rights.
So even if his home suburb was an enclave, at school he would have been exposed to ideas challenging the apartheid system.
Exactly. It adds a layer of complexity. He wasn't completely shut off from the wider moral and political debates happening. That exposure is significant.
Okay, let's layer on top of that his family background, which is, well, it's quite something, particularly his grandfather. Now, Musk himself has said he's not a conservative. He supported Democrats until recently, but his grandfather's politics.
It's fascinating, and you could argue quite revealing. His maternal grandfather, back in Canada in the 1930s, led this fringe political movement. The sources describe it as having fascist overtones.
Fascist overtones. What was their platform?
They were explicitly campaigning for the government to be run by essentially a technical elite. Experts, engineers, scientists, what we'd now call technocrats. They wanted these people to replace elected politicians.
A technocrat. That's another key vocabulary word for you. A leader whose authority comes from their technical expertise. That sounds, well, it sounds quite resonant with Musk's own later approach, doesn't it?
The parallels are hard to ignore, right? This idea that technical experts know best how to solve society's problems.
And the grandfather actually moved the family to apartheid South Africa.
He did, apparently because he found the racist hierarchical system there appealing. It fit with his belief in rule by a select superior group, not messy democracy.
So that history, that deep-seated belief maybe that expertise trumps democracy, it provides a really interesting backdrop for understanding someone who later proposes these huge technology-led solutions for all of humanity, whether it's going to Mars or implanting chips in brains.
Absolutely. It raises questions about whether technology is seen as the ultimate solver, potentially bypassing traditional governance or public consensus.
So if we put it all together, the trauma of being viciously bullied, leading to an escape into tech, the isolation of living in that wealthy enclave, and this family history promoting rule by technocrats. It's quite a potent mix.
It certainly paints a picture of someone potentially driven to reshape the world based on his own very technical vision.
Okay, so that background sort of sets the stage for his move to North America, then the U.S., and getting into the tech scene. His first really big splash was PayPal, obviously. But the origin story there isn't straightforward, is it? Lots of conflict.
Not at all. It's often simplified. PayPal actually started as a company called Confinity, founded by Peter Thiel and Max Lifchin. They were focused on payments between handheld devices like Palm Pilots.
Right. And Musk had his own company.
He did X.com, which was
Uh,
aiming to be this all-encompassing online bank. They merged in 2000.
and that merger created this leadership setup.
Yeah, what's often called a triumvirate. That's a great word. triumvirate. It means a ruling group of three people, in this case, Musk, Thiel, and Levchin sharing, or rather fighting for, control.
A triumvirate.
Okay.
And it was a volatile mix because their ideas for the company were fundamentally different.
Completely. X.com's vision was just too broad, trying to do everything in online finance. It wasn't really catching on. Confinity's focus was narrower, but maybe not ambitious enough for Musk.
So lots of internal battles. The whole PayPal mafia story starts here.
Right. The conflict was really about finding focus, and it wasn't until they eventually, somewhat reluctantly, decided to ditch the X.com brand and really zero in on one specific problem that they found their niche.
Found their niche,
Hmm.
meaning they discovered that specific, specialized corner of the market where they could really succeed. What was that niche?
It was basically making it easy and safe to pay for things on eBay. That was the killer app.
Right. Because back then, late 90s, early 2000s, buying something on eBay often meant mailing a physical check or a money order.
Exactly, which was slow, inconvenient, risky.
Yeah.
It was full of friction.
Okay, friction. That's a really useful business term for you listeners.
Yeah.
When we talk about removing friction, it means making a process smoother, easier, getting rid of the obstacles for the customer. Mailing a check is definitely high friction.
Totally. And PayPal just brilliantly used email and credit cards, which were becoming common, to completely remove that friction. They figured out how to handle small payments efficiently, securely link bank accounts.
And it just took off because it solved a real everyday annoyance for millions of people.
Exponential growth, because it solved a genuine pain point.
And the financial success from that was the seed money for his next big things, right?
It's absolutely crucial. The company went public, IPO'd in February 2002, with a valuation around $777 million.
Not bad.
Not bad at all. And then just 8 months later, eBay bought them. The acquisition was for $1.5 billion.
$1.5 billion. Okay.
And that acquisition wasn't just about the money, though obviously that was huge. It was also validation. Proof that Musk's approach, high-risk, tech-focused, even with all the internal drama, could generate massive returns.
So key things from this phase. That difficult triumvirate leadership finally succeeding when they found their niche by removing friction for eBay users, and the huge acquisition by eBay, which gave him the capital and maybe the confidence for what came next.
Exactly. It set the stage for SpaceX and Tesla.
All right, let's move on to those two giants then, Tesla and SpaceX. They seem very different cars and rockets, but is there a common thread, a kind of unifying idea behind them?
I think there is. From his perspective, as presented in the sources, both address what he sees as fundamental existential necessities.
Necessity, how so?
Well, SpaceX is framed as tackling the risk of humanity being wiped out if we stay stuck on just one planet. Existential risk number one.
Okay, the asteroid scenario,
Yeah.
or climate catastrophe.
Right, and Tesla is framed as tackling the other major existential risk, climate change driven by burning fossil fuels, unsustainable energy.
So both are presented as solutions to potentially species-ending problems.
Exactly. And both were founded on the idea that the existing industries, aerospace and automotive, were just not moving fast enough or radically enough. So they needed a complete shakeup, driven by, well, audacious engineering.
Let's start with SpaceX, founded back in 2002. The stated goal was, pretty clearly, to slash the cost of getting to space, ultimately paving the way for humans to live on Mars.
Paving the way, that's a great idiom for you, meaning creating the opportunity, making it possible for something to happen later.
But that path was almost, well, it almost didn't happen, right? The early years were incredibly tough.
Brutal is the word the sources often use. This is where that theme of persistence really comes through. Remember the Falcon 1 rocket?
Vaguely, that was their first one.
Yeah. It took 3 failed launch attempts before it finally reached orbit on the 4th try in September 2008.
3 failures.
And each failure just burned through cash. By that 3rd failure, Musk had reportedly put virtually all his money from the PayPal sale into SpaceX. The company was literally days, maybe hours away from bankruptcy.
Wow, just on the brink.
Completely on the brink. That 4th launch succeeding was everything.
Okay, so sheer persistence got them into orbit. But what was the big technical innovation that really changed the game?
Reusability, no question. Specifically, figuring out how to land the rocket's first stage back on Earth so it could be flown again.
Which sounds simple, but I guess it's incredibly hard.
Think about it. You've got this huge metal tube, taller than a building, coming back from the edge of space at hypersonic speeds. You have to reignite its engines perfectly, steer it through the atmosphere, and land it upright on a tiny pad, either on land or a drone ship at sea.
Okay, yeah, that sounds difficult.
It required completely new designs, materials, incredibly sophisticated guidance software, stuff the established aerospace companies frankly thought was crazy or just too expensive to even try. They just threw stages away.
And once SpaceX cracked that landing problem, the whole rhythm of their launches changed, didn't it? The cadence.
Exactly. Cadence, C-A-D-E-N-C-E. That refers to the rhythm, the rate, the frequency of an activity. It's often used in business and manufacturing.
Good word.
So yeah, they had the first successful landing on land in 2015, first reuse of a landed booster in 2017, and that just opened the floodgates. As of mid-2025, they've landed and reflown Falcon 9 boosters over 450 times.
450.
Yeah, and their launch cadence now is sometimes 2-3 launches a week. It's like an assembly line for rockets.
Which must have completely disrupted the existing market. You mentioned companies like ULA, United Launch Alliance.
Oh, totally. ULA, which was a joint venture of Boeing and Lockheed Martin, had basically had a monopoly on U.S. military launches for years, and their costs had crept up, sometimes over $400 million for a single launch.
$400 billion.
Then SpaceX comes along, offering reliable launches for, a fraction of that cost because they could reuse the expensive part. It gave them a massive competitive advantage.
Competitive advantage, meaning something that lets a company outperform its rivals. Reusability was definitely that.
It forced the entire industry to change rapidly, adapt, or become irrelevant.
And they're not stopping. You've got Starship now, the huge new rocket aiming for the moon and Mars.
Biggest rocket ever flown, yeah. Designed for over 100 tons to orbit. And Starlink, their satellite internet constellation.
Right. Thousands of satellites, huge factory in Texas, churning them out. The scale and speed just seem relentless.
That's all a core part of the strategy, scale and speed.
Okay, let's shift gears to Tesla. Equally disruptive, maybe even more visible to the average person. The sources often quote Musk saying it's not just a car company.
Right. He consistently frames it as an energy company. The mission, again, is framed in these very large terms, drastically cutting humanity's carbon footprint by accelerating the transition to sustainable energy, primarily through electric vehicles, but also battery storage.
And the way they started was also kind of backwards, wasn't it? That famous master plan.
Yeah, it seemed counterintuitive to many people at the time. Most companies trying to launch a new technology aim for the mass market first, try to get volume up and costs down.
But Tesla started with a super expensive sports car, the Roadster.
Exactly. That was step one of the master plan. Build a low-volume, high-price, high-performance electric sports car. Why? To generate buzz, prove the technology could be cool, and bring in initial cash flow from wealthy early adopters.
Okay, create desirability first.
Right. Then step two, use the money and the engineering know-how gained from the Roadster to develop a more affordable, higher-volume luxury sedan that was the Model S and later the Model X SUV. This helped drive down battery costs through manufacturing experience. That's the experience curve concept.
Right, the more you make something, the better and cheaper you get at making it.
Precisely. And then step three, use the money and the efficiencies from that stage to finally build the truly affordable mass market car, the Model 3.
It's actually quite logical when you lay it out like that,
Yeah.
but it required a huge bet on battery technology improving and costs coming down. A real leap of faith.
Definitely a leap of faith, betting that the engineering challenges could be solved and the economics would work out over time.
Now, besides the cars themselves, what were some of the unique business principles Tesla used that gave them that competitive advantage over the giant legacy automakers?
Well, there are a few really striking ones. First, maybe the most radical, was the decision about open patents.
Right. They said anyone could use their patents.
Yeah.
That sounds weird for a tech company.
It sounded like commercial suicide to a lot of people. Why give away your secrets? But the stated rationale was that Tesla's real protection wasn't patents, it was the speed of their innovation. And
there's a more cynical take, isn't there?
well, the strategic analysis is that for electric cars to succeed broadly, Tesla needed an entire ecosystem to develop charging stations, battery suppliers, customer acceptance. By opening patents, they arguably encouraged competitors to jump in faster, which helped build that necessary ecosystem, ultimately benefiting Tesla as the leader.
Huh. That's pretty audacious thinking. using openness as a weapon.
You could see it that way. Very non-traditional. Second big difference, direct sales. No franchise dealerships like every other car company.
Why do that? Dealers seem like a standard part of selling cars.
Control. It allows Tesla to own the entire customer relationship, from sales to service. They get direct feedback, control the brand experience, and avoid the conflicts of interest that can arise with independent dealers.
And third,
Zero advertising, or at least very little traditional advertising. They rely almost entirely on the product itself, word of mouth, and Musk's own public profile to attract what they call the discerning customer.
discerning customer, meaning someone who is selective, has good judgment, and isn't easily swayed by hype. They value the actual product.
Exactly. The idea is the car's quality and innovation pulls those customers in, rather than Tesla having to push the message out with ads.
And underpinning all of this, maybe the biggest competitive advantage was the charging network.
The supercharger network, yeah. Huge investment early on, building out thousands of fast charging stations worldwide. That became Tesla's moat, a barrier competitors found really hard to replicate quickly.
And they were smart about where they put them too, right? Co-located with other things.
Yeah, co-located meaning situated together or side by side. They partnered with hotels, restaurants, shopping centers, so charging time wasn't dead time. You could grab a coffee or a meal.
Makes sense. And they're fast.
Pretty fast, adding maybe 270 kilometers, what's that, about 170 miles of range in roughly half an hour. And the cost, especially with initial free credits many owners got, made long-distance travel way cheaper than gasoline.
So it's a whole package. The car, the software, the direct sales, the charging network. Very integrated.
Exactly, controlling the whole ecosystem.
Okay, so we've seen SpaceX paving the way with an incredible launch cadence, and Tesla using audacious thinking and things like open patents to build competitive advantage and attract discerning customers, all while taking a leap of faith on the core tech. Powerful stuff.
Yeah.
All right, let's shift focus now to the present day and this kind of striking contrast within Musk's sphere of influence. On one hand, you have the extreme cutting-edge work at Neuralink, and on the other, some really profound, almost basic human welfare issues that came up at PayPal years after he'd left.
It's a fascinating juxtaposition, yeah.
Let's start with Neuralink. Brain-computer interfaces, BCIs. This feels like pure science fiction becoming reality.
It really does. And it's moving at an incredible speed, maybe an unchecked pace, some critics would say. Unchecked pace meaning moving forward very fast without enough control or oversight.
But the technical achievements are undeniable, right?
Oh, absolutely extraordinary. They implanted their first device, the N1 telepathy implant, into a human patient in January 2024.
And this is someone with severe paralysis.
Yes, a quadriplegic individual. And almost immediately, they demonstrated the ability to control a computer cursor just by thinking. Playing online chess, posting on social media.
Just incredible potential there for restoring function.
Huge potential. And then there's the Blindsight Project, another experimental implant aiming to restore vision by directly stimulating the visual part of the brain. That received a breakthrough device designation from the FDA in late 2024, which helps speed up development and review.
So the upsides are potentially life-changing for people with disabilities.
Yeah.
But there have been criticisms, ethical concerns.
Big ones. And this is where that unchecked pace becomes a potential problem. The sheer speed of innovation bumps up against the need for extreme caution when you're dealing directly with the human brain.
What specifically were the concerns?
A major one was transparency. Neuralink got criticized quite heavily for how they communicated their progress. Instead of publishing detailed results in peer-reviewed scientific journals, which is the standard norm, major announcements often came via Musk's social media posts or company blog updates.
Which isn't the same level of scientific scrutiny.
Not at all. And perhaps more seriously, there were questions raised about delays in formally registering their clinical trial details publicly. That's a key ethical requirement, part of frameworks like the Declaration of Helsinki, designed to protect people participating in research. It really highlighted the need for stringent oversight.
Stringent oversight, meaning very strict, careful supervision. Why is that so critical with brain implants compared to, say, a new phone?
Because the interaction is so intimate and potentially powerful. A BCI isn't just sending commands out like thinking move cursor left. It's also potentially reading in vast amounts of complex neural data.
Ah, so it's bidirectional. Data going both ways.
Exactly. And that immediately throws up huge red flags around privacy. What happens to that incredibly sensitive brain data? Who owns it? How is it protected?
And beyond privacy, there are deeper philosophical questions too.
For sure. We're talking about blurring the lines between the human mind and external technology. What does that do to our sense of self, our identity, our agency, our ability to act independently if your thoughts are being mediated or even potentially influenced by a device?
You get into that whole cyborg territory, part human, part machine. Who is responsible if something goes wrong?
Precisely.
Hmm.
What if the device malfunctions and causes the user to harm someone else? Who's liable? The user, the company, the algorithm? The technology is developing much faster than our legal and ethical frameworks can keep up.
Okay, let's do a sharp turn now. Away from the bleeding edge of neurotech, back to PayPal, the company Musk co-founded but left long ago. Years later, under a different CEO, Dan Schulman, they uncovered a really uncomfortable truth internally.
Yeah, it was quite a shock for them, apparently. They discovered that a really significant number, a large proportion of their own employees, particularly entry-level and hourly workers in customer service centers, were struggling financially.
The very people working for a company whose mission is about financial access and empowerment were themselves financially insecure.
Exactly. The internal data showed something like 65% of those employees were running out of money between paychecks, living paycheck to paycheck.
Wow, that's
Uh,
quite an indictment.
It was. And there was this one specific anecdote that really drove it home.
The soup kitchen story.
Yeah. Apparently, some senior PayPal leaders were doing volunteer work at a food bank or soup kitchen near one of their big operations centers in Arizona. And the person running the place told them, a lot of the people who rely on our services, they actually work for you.
Oof, that must have hit hard.
You'd imagine so. It forced a real reckoning inside the company, and it led them to pivot towards a philosophy known as stakeholder capitalism.
Stakeholder capitalism. Okay, what's that contrasted with?
Traditionally, the main focus in business, especially in the US, has been on shareholder capitalism, maximizing profits for the owners, the shareholders. Stakeholder capitalism argues that companies have a responsibility to create value for all stakeholders. That includes employees, customers, suppliers, the community, the environment, not just shareholders.
So PayPal decided they needed to invest in their employees' financial well-being.
They did. They launched this big 4-point plan in 2019. It cost tens of millions of dollars just in the first year. It was a major commitment.
What did the plan involve?
4 main things. 1, they raised wages, specifically targeting those lower paid roles. 2, they significantly cut the cost of healthcare premiums for employees by about 60%, saving people maybe $30 to $160 per paycheck, which is huge at that income level.
Definitely.
3, they gave out one-time stock grants averaging around $3,100, even to hourly workers. The idea was to give everyone a chance to build some actual wealth, be owners.
Okay.
And 4, they rolled out free financial education programs and coaching to help employees manage their money better.
That sounds incredibly comprehensive, but also expensive. The sources said it was taking a leap of faith.
It was. Taking a leap of faith, another great idiom, meaning you decide to do something based on belief or trust rather than concrete proof it will work out. They believed investing in their people was the right thing to do and hoped it would pay off for the business too, but it wasn't guaranteed.
And did it pay off? What were the results?
The results were actually pretty dramatic. Employee turnover, the rate at which people leave the company, especially in those high-stress customer service jobs, dropped significantly. It went from nearly 20% down to just over 7%.
That's a massive improvement. That saves a lot of money in recruitment and training, too.
Exactly. And overall, employee engagement scores went up. So the leap of faith worked. It showed that, as Schulman put it, profit and purpose could go together. Investing in employee well-being directly benefited the company's bottom line.
A powerful lesson in stakeholder capitalism actually delivering results. #tag discussion and reflection.
So when you put these threads together, you see this incredible tension, don't you? On one side, Musk's relentless drive for these huge, world-changing goals like Mars colonization or brain implants, often pushing boundaries at that unchecked pace.
Yeah, the sheer audacity of it.
But then on the other side, you have the slower, maybe more difficult work of ensuring basic human well-being and ethical responsibility, whether that's the need for stringent oversight at Neuralink or the realization at PayPal that stakeholder capitalism isn't just nice to have, it's essential.
It suggests that radical innovation can't be completely detached from its human consequences.
Right.
Right, though those consequences are for clinical trial participants or your own employees.
Exactly. Musk's story seems defined by that defiance of norms, that willingness to challenge everything. But it also forces us, and maybe him, to constantly grapple with the costs and responsibilities that come with that kind of power.
Okay, let's bring this back to you, our listener, especially thinking about your English learning journey. What are the practical mindset lessons here?
Well, Think about SpaceX and those Falcon 1 failures. 3 crashes, almost going bankrupt.
Yeah.
Learning a language, especially getting from intermediate to truly advanced, is full of failures. You try a complex sentence, it comes out wrong, you forget a word you knew yesterday, you misunderstand something. It happens constantly.
It definitely does.
The lesson from SpaceX is perseverance, right? You can't let those failures stop you. You have to analyze what went wrong, maybe, but then you just have to try again. Launch again, immediately. Don't dwell on the crash.
I like that. Embrace the failed launches in your speaking practice.
Exactly. And also, think about that audacious thinking we saw in Tesla's strategy, like the open patents or direct sales. For your English, that means you need to think outside the box of just textbooks and structured lessons sometimes.
How so?
Seek out challenging, real-world stuff. Listen to podcasts like this one. Watch complex movies without subtitles sometimes. Try reading articles on topics you don't fully understand yet. Use those difficult words we talked about: triumvirate, competitive advantage, stringent oversight. Try using them in conversation or writing, even if you're not 100% sure you've got them perfect.
Be willing to take that leap of faith in your own ability.
Precisely. You have to push your boundaries. That's how you move from just understanding English to actually using it fluently and confidently. It requires a bit of boldness.
So maybe the question for you to reflect on after listening today is this. What's one established boundary in how you currently practice English, or maybe even a boundary in your life goals that you feel ready to challenge? What's one piece of audacious thinking you could apply to your learning plan for the next few months?
Good challenge.
Yeah.
Hashtag tag tag conclusion. All right, let's wrap up this deep dive. Just to quickly summarize the main takeaways from this look at Elon Musk's journey and mindset. Yeah, I think first, it's clear his career is just a massive case study in disrupting entire industries, right? Space, cars, potentially neurotech. And it's fueled by taking huge personal and financial risks and focusing on what he frames as fundamental problems.
We saw that in Tesla's master plan, using that tiered approach and unconventional tactics like open design to build competitive advantage.
But second, we also saw that this kind of rapid, tech-driven change inevitably comes with significant ethical questions and social responsibilities. The Neuralink example really highlights the need for stringent oversight and careful thought about human impact.
Yeah, the pace of innovation versus the pace of ethical reflection.
And third, the lesson from PayPal, even though it happened after Musk left, is really important. That persistence and ambition need to be balanced with a sense of responsibility towards all stakeholders. Investing in people, stakeholder capitalism, can actually strengthen the business. It proved purpose and profit aren't opposites.
Great summary. And let's quickly recap just a few of the key English words and phrases we highlighted for you today.
We had triumvirate, that ruling group of 3.
Removing friction, making processes easier for customers.
Cadence, the rhythm or rate of activity, like SpaceX's launches.
We use viciously bullied to describe the intensity of that early trauma.
And the need for stringent oversight when dealing with powerful new technologies.
Plus others, like enclave, technocrat, found its niche, acquisition, paving the way, competitive advantage, leap of faith, audacious thinking, discerning customer, co-located, and unchecked pace.
Keep listening for these. Try using them yourself. That's how they stick.
Absolutely. Well, that's all the time we have for this exploration into the complex world of Elon Musk. We really hope this deep dive has given you not just insights into his story, but also some powerful tools to boost your English.
Keep learning, keep being audacious in your own way, and definitely keep practicing.
Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back tomorrow with another real story designed to help you learn English through inspiration. See you then.
Bye for now.